Welcome to this truly important video. This video is documenting the prediction that the US stock market will make its all-time peak high on August 12th, 2026, and then begin its biggest crash in all of history. We are specifically pinpointing the exact date of the all-time peak in the stock market. I believe it'll be both the peak for the intraday and all-time closing highs. There's a difference between a closing high and an intraday high, but I don't think it'll matter. I think it'll be clear in both cases that the all-time closing high and the intraday high will both be reached on August 12th, and then the biggest crash in history will commence. The date that this video is posted on the social media platform you are watching it on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email. As we can see here, this email was composed on August 3rd, and currently the market is still continuing to go higher. The market is presently making new all-time highs as we speak. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward this to you. However, there's no reason for you to be skeptical. I do not have an inside connection at all of the social media platforms in which they can adjust dates for me. And of course, videos can't be edited once they are posted. So, to begin this extraordinary story that God is telling, which is how this prediction is known, I'm going to play a recording that I made for a friend of mine when I first learned of this insight. And I'm going to then return after the recording and elaborate some more with some more very interesting things. Hey, brother. Wanted to give you this amazing news, this amazing update here. What I was saying is that, so I was checking to see if I was right about this date. And I'll tell you about this. Okay? Because, I've been telling you for years, the David Blaine fall from the sky on September 2nd, 2020 is indicative of a peak. And I've always known that it would someday reveal the date of the peak. And sure enough, it does. And it does so without a doubt. Like, it's extremely clear. It's without a doubt. So what triggered this morning was I was thinking about the GameStop sign because the market is going to new highs. June 2nd was not the peak high. By the way, June 2nd, September 2nd, I forget the connection between those two dates, but I'm pretty sure that was relevant too. All right, I'm just going to interject into this message I was leaving recording for my friend. And to elaborate, the David Blaine fall from the sky prophetic sign on September 2nd, 2020 was exactly 69 months before this GameStop sign on June 2nd, 2026. This is very relevant because 69 months hints at the most central prophecy in the Bible, which is the 70 weeks prophecy. The 70 weeks prophecy regards a period of 69 weeks followed by a 70th week. The David Blaine fall from the sky peak sign was exactly 70 weeks. Prior to the January 5th, 2022 major interim scale, intermediate term peak. In other words, there was a major peak and there was a major decline that lasted until, I think it was June or July that year. But the peak was made on January 5th, 2022. And that was exactly 70 weeks after the David Blaine fall. And so from the David Blaine fall, it is also exactly 69 months, and that both of them together confirm each other because these are the numbers in the most central prophecy. And of course, this prophecy regards a period of time, 69 weeks and 70 weeks, and so we have the 70 weeks connection and the 69 months connection. Likewise, the June 2nd, 2026 peak was a significant peak, not as significant as the one in 2022, but nonetheless it was a significant peak, and like I am describing to my friend here, there was a prophetic sign that confirmed the fact and was recognized on that day, this particular sign, that it was a sign indicating the all-time peak of the stock market with this GameStop stock sign. Okay, that June 2nd date and that peak was not surpassed until August 3rd or 4th. I don't know if it actually passed it yesterday. If it didn't, it probably will today, or is doing so as I'm speaking right now. And so that was a significant intermediate term peak. But anyway, so as I've been telling you, June 2nd was the GameStop sign, and God was using that as a sign for the peak, right? Unless it was a step. But if it was a step, does the June 2nd sign reveal the date of the peak? You would think that it probably does. And although I can't recall the details, there were multiple instances of the number 26 in the sign on June 2nd, which in itself was believed to be at the time confirmation of June 2nd, 6-2, right? So 2-6 outside the US, right? So I thought at the time, for good reason, that the 26s were pointing to June 2nd. And they were, but it's just a step. So do the 26s point to something else? And when I say 26s, I remember there being, for example, like 2.06% in the GameStop stock, for example. So it was like not just 26, but 206. So these multiples of 2 and 6, right? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, 2 plus 6 is 8. Is God saying that the stock market will peak in the 8th month, August? That much we already kind of know in a way, right? So is there something else? And I thought, well, 2 times 6 is 12. And I thought, well, wait a second, that would be August 12th. And then it occurred to me that that's the date of the eclipse, right? And then something occurred to me yesterday, which is that there's this pattern between where the ship, by the way, hopefully you've caught up with the emails, because man, the last few days have been incredible with the insight, right? Always be reading the emails like I keep telling you, but if you haven't read recent days' emails, well. Okay, so what occurred to me yesterday was that there's this pattern between the name of the port where the ship departed, the Hantavirus ship, which is something like Ushuaia, right? But it ends with a AIA. The name of the port ends with an AIA, right? And then, as we have learned, and if you've read the emails, you know what I'm talking about, God pointed to Cape Verde, including through the World Cup, right? And when the ship came to port in Cape Verde, the name of the port was Praia, which ended also with an AIA. Now, I haven't yet had a chance to look it up, but it seems to be a coincidence. I doubt those two names are related. I mean, they're probably not related at all. It's probably a huge coincidence, right? So what's with that pattern, right? Because definitely, and then I thought last night, well, the initials of Ushuaia and Praia are U and P, which would spell up. And this was like right before bed, and so I was thinking before bed, well, is God connecting these signs to the rapture, like when his faithful go up? And that might be the case, because I haven't looked it up yet. But then it occurred to me today that given that the signs of the GameStop would be pointing to the eclipse, well, that up. Oh, and it occurred to me too last night that the path of the boat was going up. It went from the bottom of the globe to the top of the globe. It ultimately went to the Netherlands, right? But it went up the whole Atlantic. It was definitely an up direction, right? The way the boat went. Completely, like, obviously, right? And so you have the initials up, and the boat went up, okay? And so before bed, I was thinking, well, maybe God's pointing to the rapture, and maybe one of these dates connects to the rapture date. Well, I didn't look it up yet. But then today I'm looking at GameStop, and it's also pointing to August 12th, probably, with this 26 stuff. And that sounds like just about the right timing, actually. It sounds perfect given the wave analysis also. Okay, so I thought, well, wait a second. The eclipse is an obvious down. Like, I know you've looked at the path of the eclipse by now, right? It's clearly a down. And it's on a slight angle, like it's going slightly from top left to bottom right, like a decline in a stock market would.
And actually, the path of the ship from the Ushuaia to the Netherlands, ultimately, it's also a path that's from slightly the bottom left to the top right, just like a stock chart would indicate.
Right? So the boat goes up, the eclipse goes down, and if you read the previous emails, the World Cup, the boat, and the eclipse are all the same sign. It's all the same sign, right? You've probably read that. Well, if you've read the email, you would know that. So it's all the same sign, right? So the boat goes up, and then the eclipse goes down. And the boat goes to the ports that indicate up. So this is definitely the peak, August 12th, right? So then I thought, well, on the path, on my hike this morning, I thought, well, there's one way to confirm it, which is why I stopped, which is unusual to plug in a date, because I don't, like I said, I don't like to do business while I'm on my time off, you know? In a way, you know what I mean? So, well, sure enough, September 2nd, 2020.
Which is the date of David Blaine's fall from the sky. A prophetic sign.
Is exactly 2,170 days to August 12th. Which, as we know, is very meaningful because the date of the flood judgment was 2/17. There were two planes on 9/11 that were 17 minutes apart that hit the two towers. Two space shuttle disasters, speaking of ships, because the hantavirus thing is a ship. I just realized that. That's even more confirmation because it's ships. And that's 9/11 and the two space shuttle disasters 17 years apart. Oh, and that all points to Apollo 17, which is about the moon. And the eclipse is about the moon. Wow. I think I might use this recording in the video today, actually. Yeah, okay. And with 9/11, the day so speaking of 9/11, June 2nd, the day of the GameStop sign, which is what revealed August 12th in the first place, is 71 days to August 12th. And 71 is the 9 plus 11th prime number, which gives us 9/11. All right? All right. Now, that from the peak of the David Blaine fall from the sky, which was symbolic of the stock market falling, as we've known for years, that day is not only 2,170 days exactly to August 12th, that day is also exactly 71 months and 10 days, which hints at 711 and Genesis 7:11, which is when the flood began and the date of the flood was announced. The date 217. Who knew that you could get Genesis 7:11 in two ways, with 2,170 days and 71 months and 10 days, as a second witness confirmation that this is the beginning of the flood judgment, the peak of the stock market. Now, there's one more thing here. Well, I'm sure there's tons more, but one for now. We had the 26s on June 2nd, right? And the June 2nd date in itself confirmed the relevance of the 26s. We just didn't know that it was just a step and not the actual peak at that time. Well, the 26th prime number is 101. And we have this boat going from Ushuaia to Praia, which gives us up, right? Well, the day the ship, and by the way, speaking of ships, that's Noah's flood, because Noah and his family got into the ship. Okay, it's amazing, right? Okay, so the day that the ship, after it went up to Praia, the day that it arrived in Praia, which was May 3rd, is 101 days, or rather, 101 days, the 26th prime number of days before August 12th, the predicted peak of the stock market. Okay, but not only that, there's a second witness relevance to the 101, because it symbolizes a ship, this most famous ship called the Titanic. Because in the newly released images in 2023, we can see clearly a big 101 on the propeller of the ship Titanic, which in itself was hinting at the 101 passengers that arrived on the Mayflower ship in the spiritual founding of America, which is what the Titanic was, a sign that pointed to judgment for America through the spiritual founding of America. And we didn't know until 2023 that this was confirmed through the 101 on the propeller. Both ships, of course, crossing the Atlantic to the Promised Land, analogous to the Israelites crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. So we have the 101 on the propeller of the Titanic, and the Titanic, of course, is famous or infamous for being sunk. Like it went down to the bottom of the ocean. There was a ship that went down. When the ship, the Hantavirus ship, arrived in Praia after going up, it's hinting at going down with the 101 days, or the 26th prime number of days before August 12th.
All right, so again, this email is documenting the prediction that the U.S. stock market will peak on August 12, 2026, and then begin their biggest crashes in history. Plural because of the way I wrote the sentence, with indexes, plural, all three of them. The NASDAQ, Dow, and S&P 500. As explained, the Hantavirus ship sign is a parallel with the eclipse that will occur on August 12th. So this is explained in other videos. There's no need to explain it again. It's quite something. But the World Cup, the Hantavirus ship, and this eclipse are all part of the same sign. I'll just say this. The eclipse will pass over Greenland, the very top corner sliver of Portugal, and then Spain. This is a parallel with the ship that departed Argentina, which Spain begat, as explained better in the signs, the other video. So Argentina, in other words, is representative of Spain here. The eclipse, the ship, after it left the bottom part of Argentina, a port known as the end of the world, Ushuaia, literally its nickname is end of the world. The ship then went to Cape Verde. Cape Verde is Portuguese for green. It's a former Portuguese colony, which is a parallel with the eclipse going over Portugal. The ship didn't dock in Cape Verde. It just anchored off of it. It just barely touched Cape Verde, just like the eclipse will just barely touch Portugal. Of course, the eclipse will commence by going over Greenland, which is also hinted at with Cape Verde. And Cape Verde was the surprise story of the World Cup, if you followed it, etc. So that's all explained, all right? All right. Now, the ship departed Ushuaia, otherwise known as the end of the world. Quite appropriate given the context here of this prediction for the beginning of the biggest stock market crash in history. And it won't, of course, only be the US stock market, it'll be the world's stock market indexes. Okay, then the ship anchored in Praia, Cape Verde. There's a pattern here because Ushuaia and Praia are similar names. However, Ushuaia is derived from the native language, whatever language I forget that is, it starts with a Y, some native language in southern Argentina, native Indian, and Praia is a Portuguese name. They have nothing to do with each other, yet we have this coincidence of them both ending in AIA. All right? Now, this is a coincidence. Now, Ushuaia and Praia, with their initials, hint at U and P, which spells up. The journey of the ship in the Atlantic clearly made an upward path on the map. Not only that, like I was saying in the recording to my friend there, I actually inserted it. The path of the ship not only went up, but it went from slightly bottom left to top right, from the tip of Argentina to the Netherlands, across the Atlantic, across the globe. Just as a path of a stock or a stock index would go on a chart. So the eclipse on August 12th will clearly make a downward path on the map. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. You can look up the path of this eclipse. It's a downward path from Greenland to Portugal and then over Spain. But like I said, it's slightly from the top left to the bottom right, just like a path of a stock index on a chart. Okay, and it will be over the Atlantic, just like the ship. The path of the ship was over the Atlantic. Likewise, so will the path of the eclipse be. Again, all of that was ultimately pointing to the Titanic also, and more importantly, the Mayflower that crossed the Atlantic, making this all a prophetic sign for America, because it is always about America in God's signs. Some people ask me, why is that? Why are you always talking about prophetic signs in America? What about the rest of the world? And the answer to that is because, well, God is. The reason why I'm focused on God's signs is because God is. America is God's Gentile nation. It is an Israel. It is his chosen nation. It was formerly a nation of Christian disciples, which was used to spread the gospel around the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. Long story short. The upward and downward paths, and also because God's judgment is commensurate with the amount of blessings and light an individual or nation has received. God is also focused on judging America at this time. The upward and downward paths, and that goes likewise for the other English-speaking nations as well, in that order. And then next in that order would be Western Europe, etc. The upward and downward paths are clues to the peak, or clues that the peak in the stock market will be on August 12th, the date of the eclipse. All right? Again, this is all pointing to the eclipse because the ship is a parallel with the eclipse that I've just explained now. We have this upward and downward motions on a map, which are actually a parallel with the upward and downward motions of a stock index on a chart. And so the eclipse is August 12th, and that's why the peak will be on August 12th. In other words, the eclipse will start going down across the map on August 12th. Likewise, so will the stock market. The two paths combined will simulate the upward path of the stock market, followed by the downward path of the stock market, which is predicted to begin on the date of the eclipse. Further, on the map, the upward path of the ship is slightly left of the downward path of the eclipse. Now, this is a little bit different than what I've described so far, because on the map, not only are they going from, bottom left to top right and top left to bottom right, but these two paths, the path of the ship and the path of the eclipse, are exactly where they would be, pretty much, as if it were a natural flow of a stock on a chart. In other words, the path of the ship is slightly left of the path of the eclipse on a map. You follow that? The path of the eclipse is slightly to the right of the path of the ship that was going up, just like it would be on a chart. A second witness is David Blaine's fall from the sky in his ascension stunt on September 2nd, 2020. Like I said in the recording, I knew at the time that this date would ultimately point to the all-time peak of the stock market. I knew it even before it was discovered that the peak on January 5th, 2022 was exactly 17 weeks later, like I already mentioned in this video. I knew that long before that even. And so it was amazing to see that peak was exactly 17 weeks after September 2nd, 2020. Now, how did I know? Well, one thing about this ascension stunt sign was that it coincided, and by the way, this was predicted to be the case at the time. In other words, God was pointing to the stock Apple at the time. And I think it was like just a couple of days before it that the Apple stock split, for example. And right at that time, it became the first $2 trillion company in the world. So there was a lot of Apple in the news at that time. Well, David Blaine is from the Big Apple. And in Western art, the fall of man is depicted with an apple, which is why David Blaine's fall from the sky was symbolic of the fall of man and it being a judgment sign. Furthermore, David Blaine is associated with Harry Houdini, his idol, his favorite magician, as he said, etc. And Harry Houdini is famous for being from Appleton. So we knew ahead of time that this, before the stunt actually occurred, because he was advertising the stunt ahead of time, we knew that it would be a fall of a man sign. And that it was and it was and there was this apple symbolism in it. And so I knew ahead of time, before September 2nd, 2020, that Apple would make a peak and fall on that day. And sure enough, it did. Exactly in live time. As I thought it would. And that peak that Apple made at that time on September 2nd, 2020 was a significant peak, which wasn't overcome until late December of that year. That's a significant peak. It lasted in a bull market. Of course, this has been the major bull market for years now, but in this bull market that's been ongoing for a long time, we had a period of like 4 months almost, or something like that, in which that peak held, which was predicted ahead of time. Well, this was a stock market sign, which was further confirmation that the fall of David Blaine would ultimately point to the fall of the stock market. Furthermore, again, David Blaine is from New York City, which is where the stock market is. And let me elaborate some more about David Blaine. Okay, so as I wrote here, it was known at the time that this stunt and the date, September 2nd, 2020, would ultimately point to the date of the all-time peak of the stock market. This is certainly the case with August 12th, 2026. As I've explained in the recording, I'll just say it again though, September 2nd, 2020 is 2,170 days before August 12th. Okay, first, Blaine was born in New York City on the date that the Twin Towers first officially opened. In 1973 on April 4th, the date 4/4 in 73. That was the date that David Blaine was born, and it was the date that the Twin Towers were born. Blaine famously broke the Guinness record for time underwater without breathing on the Oprah Winfrey Show at just over 17 minutes. It was 17 minutes and a few seconds. That's amazing because on 9/11, the two planes struck the two towers 17 minutes apart. David Blaine, in other words, is a 9/11 sign. God has been using David Blaine in his signs. One major reason is that he symbolizes 9/11, and this is one way. This two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart is what is hinted at with 2,170 days. The date of Blaine's ascension stunt was on the date 9/2, which in itself hints at 9/11 because 2 is 1 + 1. So the date that David Blaine fell from the sky was 9, 1 + 1. As well, in the account of the flood, in the book of Genesis, the flood began on the date 217. Okay. And the flood began on the date 217 in Genesis 7:11. 2,170 days is also exactly 71 months and 10 days, which hints at Genesis 7:11. Like I said in the recording, it's like a second witness. The two flood numbers are right there in the connection. And of course, the stock market crash will be like a flood. And it'll be judgment from God. Again, September 2nd, 2020 is 71 months and 10 days before August 12th. Genesis 7:11. Now, what I didn't elaborate on in the recording, and I'll just do now, the reason for the two planes that were 17 minutes apart is not only to point to the flood judgment in the Bible, but also it pointed to the two space shuttle disasters that were almost exactly 17 years apart. In fact, they are commemorated on the same date every year because they occurred essentially on the same day in the calendar, just a couple of days apart, but 17 years apart. Just like the two planes that were 17 minutes apart. The shuttles that were 17 years apart pointed to Apollo 17, because the shuttle missions replaced the Apollo missions. Apollo 17 was the last time that an American departed the moon. Speaking of the ship that departed the place known as the end of the world. The moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. The sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. And watching for the timing of the moon is important in the Bible, as it symbolizes watching for the timing of the Lord's return through signs, including moon signs, including eclipses. Because eclipses are moon signs. The last departure of an American from the moon was symbolic of America's departure from Christ. 9/11, and that was Apollo 17, and 9/11 pointed to Apollo 17, and it too was a warning of America's departure from Christ. As are these connections through David Blaine, who, as I've now explained, points to 9/11. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him. And to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them. and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.